Hello and welcome to the TRUUMAN Podcast, the podcast designed to create a generation of self-defined men. Today, I'm joined by Matt Concannon, aka the Thirsty Poet. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. It's an absolute pleasure. I am really looking forward to this one. It's a little bit of a unique one. I think there'll be some interesting angles for sure. But first, Matt, in your own words, what makes you a man?
Yeah, it's a really tough question to start a Monday on because it's something that I think about quite a lot as an observer and as a writer. And a few thoughts went through my head, and I think there's the kind of sort of Disney-like depiction of what man is. Masculine, muscular, strong, emotionless, kind of these caricatures of what man is, and it's kind of seen through this warped lens. I think that's what TV and has kind of done for us. But I feel like what makes me a man is having that responsibility as man to show that the strength can be seen in different ways. Responsibility, to be strong in empathy, strong in strength to have through openness, strength to be vulnerable. That men can be more like Chip the Cup from Beauty and the Beast and not always like Gaston, or if not, one or the other, bits of each. And having that acceptance as man, Matt, say I'm not perfect and I will make mistakes and that's okay. But having that willingness to learn and hold myself accountable, to be responsible as man. Yeah, responsibility being that kind of key word there.
It's interesting that you, as you're thinking about the world, I guess, within some of your writing, which we'll obviously get into in a little bit, but do you think it's important for men in general to think about that? Do you think you've maybe not thought about that in the past and it's now more just because of what you're doing, you do think about it a bit more?
Yeah, I think it's always interesting kind of taking yourself away from where you are and to go back to where you were and realize that people are always in these different stages of the journey. I feel like I've gone through a bit of a learning curve, but kind of, we need to look at things through the kind of different lens and see things through different people's eyes and understand, everyone's at a different stage of their journey of whatever masculinity is, I guess, and saying it's okay to get things wrong. Those sort of changes are inevitable. There's only one way we can learn, and that's by doing and trying. Yeah, I think that's where you see a lot of men in that, in those sort of stages of learning. I do find it quite interesting, and that's why, as an observer, it's really interesting to see, 5-6 years ago when I first started writing, the kind of observations I was taking then, and then now, as time's gone on, new sort of stories that are opening up doors and what people are listening to, what people are watching, what people are, still watching, despite it having kind of, certain negative kind of walls there in front of people. And I just think the journey of people is so interesting, and some of the connections I've made in that regard as well.
When you sort of took that first step into writing, and I guess I'll draw a bit of a parallel to doing this as well, right? There was you were no good at it. I was no good at podcasting. I hope I'm better than I am now, than I was at the beginning, right? But do you feel that men or maybe even young boys, I guess, have a fear of failure?
Yeah, I mean, this is a massive thing for me. So I trained as an actor, and I only started writing back in 2019. Kind of spoken word poetry, what I thought was spoken word and poetry, and that kind of fear. I always had a fear of rejection, so whether I would get things right, it kind of always weighed over me of not wanting to say the wrong thing. But what is wrong is wrong to me. Didn't help being an actor, getting things wrong in that way, or the fear of rejection as an actor. But these kind of things, led into relationships and not just work-based failures. So I think there is a responsibility massively for, to have acceptance of those things that we get wrong.
Yeah, there just seemed to be a bit of a lens almost though on like this change in man, I guess. Like there's almost a fear that you have to be everything, right? You have to be in good shape, but you have to earn loads of money, but you also have to be a good dad whilst you're also pulling loads of women. There seems to be this magnification of sort of doing everything. And do you think that adds more pressure? What?
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine, I don't have kids, but the kind of pressures that have always, I think it's definitely like societal, has always put this kind of pressure and weight on man and what man should do, should be the provider, should be the breadwinner, should be, able to handle conflict, able to handle, difficult circumstances. And that's all well and good. But when it comes to the reality of the matter and, how can we do that if we've never gone through these circumstances? How can we actually react in a calm way if we go through the loss of a loved one, or we go through heartbreak, or how do we actually deal with those kind of major issues and some things that can, really change our views and change our, ways that our life trajectory goes. How do we do that? So yeah, I think it does make it quite interesting looking at society now creating this lens of man, and how I like to think that you can break down these walls and these characteristics, and that's what I try to do as a writer, and why I keep on, we're only a couple of minutes into this and I've already said observer, because it's all about the observations. And if women view us in this certain way, well, there's no right or wrong. It's just how we it's just I find it quite interesting. And other men, how other men view each other. Yeah.
You talk about observing and writing what you see. Why do you think there has been a spotlight or an increased lens on masculinity and what is man?
Yeah, there's well, I think the first piece that I ever wrote was based on the gym and this kind of world in which, the gym is this highly, full of testosterone. It's full of, sweat and, people really wanting to make sure that their bodies look a certain way. And I think we're led by social media and TikTok and Love Island and all these kind of shows that are kind of like the perfect image, or like this drawn image of what perfect is of man and masculinity. And it kind of is a bit narrow-minded. There's so much more depth into people and into man and into, what masculine is, that yes, we've got all of these shows that kind of depict that version of man, but really? Like, what about when the camera's not on them? What are we seeing? It was kind of the Love Island. I think there was a series where I think that there's been people who have taken their own lives after Love Island, and that just kind of made me go, where's the worth in this? If it's done this to people and it's damaging people, and it's who's held accountable for that? Is it the producers? Is it society saying this isn't the right version of man?
Yeah, I mean the statistics around that from both genders, right, is crazy to think that sort of pedestal that they're putting those individuals on, and it's a conveyor belt, right? I think there's one on right now, so the next lot are on their way into Influencer City to influence.
Yeah. Well, it's really. I mean, that's been one of the most thought of. Well, more recently, kind of thought pieces in terms of I remember I've watched Adolescence, which I'm sure lots of people have, and the kind of how that blew up as this, real lesson learner for lots of people in different stages of their lives. Fathers not knowing if they're what their kids are doing online, and what people are seeing, and other other children or other kids in that instance, trying to trying to be like everyone else, or trying to understand what everyone else is doing. And yeah, that kind of stemmed a more recent piece of mine, which I just found it all really interesting, those kind of observations, but from different points of view and through different lenses. And you say about influencers there, and everyone wants to be an influencer now.
Yeah.
Which, okay, what are we actually influencing? Are we influencing positivity? Are we influencing, there was a podcast that came on, and the guy said something, and it was immediately vetoed as just from saying something that someone will listen to, and they'll hear something and go, okay, cool, I'll do that. That sounds right. And you're like, where's the positive aspect of this?
Yeah.
Which is why everything that I do is kind of questions. It's not the right answer, it's questions.
I think that's so important. I think that's why I asked the question, right? What makes you a man? I think asking yourself questions is something that a lot of boys and men, boys in men's bodies, as well as I like to refer to them, they don't ask them.
Yeah.
And I was personal experience. I came to that realization. I was sat and I went, well, what is a man? Like, I'm 30 and I've failed at this and I've failed at that, and
yeah,
you know what? And it's an interesting space for sure. Do you see culture trying to push back on this manly approach, or do you think culture is trying to soften?
There's kind of a nice hybrid between the two there. I think it'd be nice to have this kind of softened version of man that has always been perceived as this hard masculinity that becomes a bit toxic, but then also the kind of, well, maybe it's hardening down on that kind of way in which people are perceived. I mean, the kind of, it's constant fear of the rights and wrongs, and what is right in these moments, and where, I don't know, how are we supposed to feel if we get something wrong, as me getting something wrong. I think that then leads into the kind of then it can only go into the youths and the kids of today, who kind of trying to get things right or following what other people are doing. So maybe there's a hard and softness that work, that can go hand in hand. Softness in, I don't know, softness in the way that we share and we open and we become more vulnerable, and that's not a bad thing. And then hardness in terms of pointing out what's wrong, and actually having the kind of being brave enough to say, no, I don't agree with that. And that being the hard.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I hear a lot of these conversations around, like, men need to talk more, men need to open up with each other, they need to be supportive of one another. Yet the most recent statistics is that boys on average can name 3 emotions. Happy, sad, and angry are the common ones.
Yeah.
How did you find it to start opening up? What was your sort of experience with that?
Well, it's funny because I've literally just looked at this. I remember I ordered something off online the other day, and it's possibly the least in terms of masculine thing that someone can just have in a frame in their house, but it says it's okay to feel your feelings. And it says happiness, sadness, anger, disgust, fear, surprise. And it's just this little poster that has those sort of things in it. I don't even know what was going through my head when I ordered it, but it's just interesting you saying that, and some kids now can only feel these emotions, and you go, where are they? Why those emotions? Why can they only name those feelings? Where are the others? And that's a little bit worrying, really, in terms of when I was first kind of observing and starting to write, I felt like I was being quite open and vulnerable. I was terrified to share my first poem that I'd written because I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was doing. I didn't know what the point of it was, because it wasn't like there was an answer to it. It wasn't like there was, it wasn't statistic based. It wasn't science. It was Matt's rambling thoughts and his brain just kind of pouring out these thoughts, and that instantly is vulnerable and instantly terrifying. And I was scared and like angry if people responded to it in the wrong way, and then overjoyed if someone responded to it in like you've really helped me there. And I remember getting messages off people saying like, thank you so much, that really helped me come to terms with things. I remember getting an email from a guy in New Zealand doing a podcast called Man Bits, and I'd just written this thing, and it wasn't for anything apart from just to put those thoughts down on a piece of paper. And then you're doing a podcast with someone talking about the similar sort of thing to what you do, Lewis, of talking about man and what makes man. And this is the first time I'd kind of thought about it, because I didn't think that's what I was writing about. I wasn't doing anything with a purpose or a goal in mind. It was just, that's what I'm just writing. Yeah, I don't know. I've always been quite open and vulnerable and had a lot of empathy. And I think that's when, I say about failure coming in and rejection, having these kind of major thoughts of failure and thoughts of getting things wrong. It's just always been really interesting to me. Why am I so worried about what people think?
You mentioned when you wrote it didn't have an answer. It wasn't scientific. It had no statistics. I hear that a lot from men. They are looking for an answer. Do you have like an opinion on that? Why do you think men want an answer to everything?
Oh gosh, yeah, we do. Well, yeah, this is another. That's another perceived lens on man. We want to have all the answers. I think everyone wants answers. It's important to know, but then it's still important to discover. And so, why should we know all the answers? I think it's always nice to learn from other people. That's what I've been trying to focus on more recently. Is yes, like I said, making mistakes and getting things wrong, but then learning from them and taking responsibility for that. That's the learning. That's why I want to know the answers, because I want to know what other people are thinking. I want to be able to kind of go, do I agree with it? Okay, even if I don't agree with it, at least I've learned, a different point of view, a different perspective. It is interesting though that men, have that kind of, you have to be right, don't you? You have to be right. I don't want to be right. As an actor, like we're taught to get things wrong and play and make mistakes, and that's rehearsal, and then you can bring it in front of an audience, and the audience can make their own choices on whether they are right or wrong, or they agree with them or disagree with them, or getting things wrong is what makes it quite exciting, but obviously then learning from it is the bit that you go, right, okay, that's what I needed.
The powerful word in that sentence there was play, right? I think men sort of forget to play. We get quite competitive with sport, and that's arguably our play. So it might be trying to hit a PR in the gym, or beat your friend at golf or squash or paddle, whatever the game may be. It's not really, should I try that shot? Or maybe not, because I'll lose. But it's so freeing, right? Once you can sort of allow yourself to almost just breathe, right?
Yeah. It is. I think that's maybe how I felt when I first started writing. Is I could breathe after it. My brain has got kind of these. It's every thought in at once. It goes. I don't know. It's like an absolute mess inside there. When they said don't use brainstorm, don't use the term brainstorm anymore in school. I'm like, well, no, because my brain is literally like thunder and lightning and rain just going absolutely haywire in there. And because there's one thought and then another thought and another thought and another thought and another thought and another thought. And it just needed to stop. And that's when putting those things down onto a piece of paper and separating those thoughts out as soon as they come to me. That's how I now navigate, 33 years of age, recently diagnosed ADHD. It all makes a bit more sense now with those internal thoughts and going, right, okay, now I can place these thoughts down, ask those questions, say my point of view or another person's point of view based on observations, and, not let everything just spiral.
I have a few friends who've also recently or long-term been diagnosed with ADHD. And one of the common sentences that I hear is, it's really freeing to know that I have it.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I feel like in the 33 years that I have been on this planet, I've tried to understand myself and understand my brain, and it makes you go back into kind of childhood. And I had a really good upbringing. My mum and dad have always been so supportive, my brother as well. And it made me look into kind of school and how I was in school, and being a bit of a dick in school kind of made a bit more sense now. And I'm not saying it's given me a free pass to make those mistakes, but I've wanted to educate myself on myself for so long and why I make mistakes and taking that responsibility. And I finally feel like I can take the responsibility for the way that my brain works and the thoughts that I have. And it's freeing. It's not the answer, having a diagnosis, but it certainly helped me kind of navigate the next stage. Okay, cool. Now I can lean into this in a different light and go, let's try something a bit different, or what works for me now. And that's all I think I wanted from it.
Yeah, I think a lot of men will live with it because they fear doctors and don't want to be tarnished. But again, I've heard countless people say that it's useful to know you can do the next thing and try new things.
So that was it. Yeah, I've been to the doctors multiple times with kind of depression and never really felt like it was taken that seriously. This is what it is. Here's some tablets, take them. Hopefully it helps. And you're like, no, come on. Like, surely there's more to it than that. Like some doctors who just didn't even look you in the eye. And you're like, I'm here just because something doesn't feel quite right or something's a bit off.
Yeah.
And I'm finally doing this as this man who's now being strong in a different way, acceptance. And I'm met with this kind of wall again and going, well, that's going to stop people going back to the doctor. That's going to stop people starting to open up about things and put on the referral for ADHD treatment. It's going to stop that from happening if, as soon as you walk in with acceptance of it, that you are met with a, oh, it might not be that, just have these instead. I think there's probably loads of people who fear going, opening up to people and starting those sort of conversations. I mean, that kind of leads into kind of one of newest piece of poetry that I wrote, which is kind of all about checking in on people, and it's through this lens of chess. I've never understood the rules of chess. I don't know if you play chess, but
a little bit, yeah.
A little bit, yeah. I really don't. My mates tried to teach me, but this is just based on the kind of observations. I mean, I'll do a little bit of this piece. It's called Checkmate. So do you fancy a game of chess, mate? Okay. But first, a checkmate. Hi, how are you? How's your day? How's your life? Talk to me about the way you feel. Are you all right? Yeah, feels like a big question, but trust it's harder to hide it. See, I'd like to open up your brain and see what's going on inside it, but not in a Hannibal Lecter way. No, I don't want to get all psycho. I just want to check to see, my friend, are you really doing all right, though? because you've been avoiding all my texts and my calls just don't connect. And every time I try to invite you out, I just don't know what to expect. My mum saw you just the other day. She said, you look like you've never slept. And yes, you've told me that you're fine before, but I've taken time to reflect. I'm not saying I don't believe you, because at times I know you are. But there's a fine line between you're fine today and the fine I know you. Like chess, it's hard to understand, and I don't want to be incorrect. I'm just trying to work out what's happening, because I'm starting to suspect that you're playing a difficult game. So now I know it's time I checked. Call this my gambit advantage. I move to you. I can't neglect, mate, because I can't imagine losing you. You're the king we need to protect, mate. Look, it's all right if you're not feeling up to it. And it's okay if you don't want to go, but what's not okay is you keeping it quiet, thinking I don't want to know. So I'm asking now in confidence. I'm asking now because I love you. We can get you out of this stalemate game together and rise above them. Relax the rules and share the burden. I'll carry some of the stress weight. Help me understand what is going on and teach me some of your tech, mate. And I'll listen to you. And I hear you. And share with you or just spectate so your game isn't over too soon before I can even checkmate. Make your move. And tell me you're struggling, or tell me to fuck off and go, or tell me that you need some help today, and wherever you need me, I'll go. There's no rules in our game of chess, mate. Our pawns and pieces can move slow. There's no need for resignation, another name added to name unknown. I just want to do what I can to help, because if I'm honest, I'm struggling too. If I'm honest, I'll do what I can for you, hoping helping you can help me too. So, checkmate. Are you okay, mate?
Amazing. Wow, so much to sort of unpick. I think one line that really hit home for me was "Let's break the rules, mate." What What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that it's another one of these kind of men don't do this, men don't do that, men don't do these things. What about if we did? You know, is that breaking of the stigma that surrounds these, rules. Well, the rules are made to be broken is a whole thing. But in terms of this sort of talk of vulnerability and openness, if you feel like you can't, if you're not being open because there's these rules in place, that the man rules of not being open, then break those walls down and break those rules. And this is what I mean. I never understood chess, but put a chessboard in front of me, I'll surely learn how to play. And I might get it wrong, and I might not know the rules, and I might forget them the next time we come back to playing it. But at least I've opened and given myself to it in a certain way.
There's a really sort of powerful place to ask that question. I'll share a story of a mutual friend of ours. So Luke from Two Pints Deep. I met him in London last week just gone, and we had the initial "Hey, how are you? All good, yeah." And then we had our chat, and the end of the chat, he asked, "And how are you doing?" Which I thought was a really powerful place to put it.
Yeah. Because you can be kind of quashed by you get sucked into other conversations, and the first kind of, "You're right, mate, how's it going? You're right." Yeah, fine. Yeah, sound absolutely, sorted. To end on that, people would think it's kind of too heavy. Why would you want to end on a kind of another question like that? Because it's only going to open another conversation, which might be another. Well, you might have already been sat in a bar for an hour. Yeah. It could be another 3 hours of you sitting in a bar afterwards, or it could warrant that, or you could feel like you're walking away from. Should I have walked away from that? Should I have got that train, or should I have just got a later one? Ending it there, I find that really, really interesting. Such a heavy question, but like almost loaded, but rightly so. We don't do that enough.
No, I think so. I just thought it was a really great place to put it, because, like you say, all those things you just mentioned, he meant it. It meant he wanted to know. I think that's was the hardest thing about it, the way it hit.
Yeah, I try and, with the pieces that I write, I like to, you start with a thought, you start with this kind of idea, and then everything in the gap is just other observations and other questions and other alternatives of this story. And then weaving that back to that first question at the, that we opened it with. It's the, hi, how are you? How's your day? How's your life? And then ending it with, so checkmate, are you okay? We're back there after 2 minutes or whatever it is of a piece of poetry that opens these doors and kind of says, look, this is where I am. This is what I've noticed. This is what I've seen. Okay, let's talk about it.
Do you find that now that you're more open, the people that you're around are more open?
Yeah, I think so. Especially like family now. Kind of, I was on the journey for finding out like about ADHD. I think I was on like a waiting list through the NHS because I couldn't afford to go private, but it was probably a year and a half. But I've always wanted to get something done. I've always thought that there was maybe something there. And it didn't feel difficult to tell my mum and dad. And it didn't feel difficult to tell my brother or some of my closest mates. And it wouldn't be something that I wear as like a, you have to know this before I get in a room, because it's part of me that my brain clearly works in a certain way, and that's fine. But it made them understand that sometimes I can feel like this, and not knowing necessarily what to do, but just being able to be a bit more kind of open with that. It's been quite, I think this is what's made it even more freeing and kind of a release, is that kind of, right, okay, now the people that I trust really are on board with me, and they trust me and they understand me. I mean, one of my mates said it the other week. He was saying, because I'm rubbish at planning. I try and plan, and I'm really, really bad at it. And I'll just message like 10 minutes before and say, I'm in here if you want to come and get a coffee. And he's like, why didn't you bloody let me know? Like, I've got stuff on now. I would have loved to come and met you, because we haven't seen each other for a little while. And now he's aware of, obviously, if I still do that sort of thing and invite him very, very last minute, it's not because he's a last minute thought. It's just because I thought about it in that moment, and I've gone, you know what, I'd love for him to be here and have a chat. And now he knows, with that kind of diagnosis there, he just kind of went, well, it makes a bit more sense now. So I'm not going to hold it to you. I'm not going to hold you accountable for not seeing me or not wanting to, I don't think you don't want to see me. But sometimes if you don't know, then you kind of go, well, maybe I'm the one who always makes the plans because they actually can't be bothered with me. I'm like, no, that's not the case.
There is an element of that, though, right? I think with male friendships that may not all be rooted in ADHD, where it's like they sort of drift over time, right? So they may be friends from school, and you just sort of, maybe you just naturally drift. But for that one guy that was in that hometown, it's their friendship, and they're a bit sad when it sort of drifts away. Have you got any sort of tips or advice for people that may be in that situation that want to keep those connections?
See, I've always been big on connections. I think about the people who I've got in my life and the people who I've not let go of, but definitely kind of gone that they are a friend, but they're not necessarily the right friend for that moment.
Yeah.
It's having the kind of springboard of people who offer these different things, and it shouldn't always be an exchange in terms of like, this person gives me knows that I like beer, so I'll go to the pub with this person. This person knows I like food, so I'll go. But it's everyone offers something different, whether it's a different piece of advice, whether it's a different piece of the puzzle that is kind of going on. Some people are more the fun people who do the things, and everyone offers these different characteristics. So it's important to keep those. And if that feels like there is a drift because you feel like you're not going to that person, it might be because that's where you are at your life, that you need the other people a little bit more. And then you can go back to that person who offers you something different and be like, just letting you know, this is why we maybe haven't seen each other, is because I've been feeling like this, or I've been going through this journey, and that's what I've needed to deal with. Not necessarily without you, but it's more important to be able to come back to you once I've understood myself and understood the things that I need. And that's just part of the journey. That's part of the challenge of education on yourself, learning about yourself.
I think I like to say that the men should be more more selfish. And I think, I mean that sincerely. I don't mean it as a be a knob, but in a way that a lot of people sort of stop making friends or stop trying. It may be an introverted sort of thing, or it may be an anxiety thing. I'm not too sure where it sort of stems from. I mean, I struggle with it myself to go to new places and networking. All these things are scary for me, right? But
Yeah.
I do this. I've met 75 plus men who want to talk about this, which is powerful, right? And you can do that on a smaller scale in that way. And I think there's an element of that exploration, and to go all the way back to the beginning, that play and that ability to fail is really important when it comes to male on male relationships as well.
Absolutely. I feel like I've been able to connect with more people more recently than ever before. I think maybe you hold on to something that it was. So the friends from the kind of past, some that I'm, still, they're still my closest friends, but you do feel that there is a sort of change there. But I'm the same in terms of, I go and do these events, or I go and I meet people like yourself, or I meet people like, Luke, who's gone through his own journey from, doing the 2 pints deep stuff. But teaching and education and going into schools and working with, kids. I'm going to be working, around Salford with an amazing company called Art with Heart, who will be, discovering the kind of Salford story. I'm very much home rooted, but what is Salford to them, and what does it mean to them? I get to work with, with these people who will have similar sort of connection with, and will find some sort of common ground, but their journeys might just be a little bit different. And it doesn't mean that it's wrong or right. It's just the kind of beauty on it, really, is learning from people and connecting, constantly thinking about connection.
I think so. I think it's something that maybe that 2019 period of the world has either pushed people down into away from it, or really ignited a fire for people to try and find it again in whatever way they can.
Well, that's where the thirsty poet came from. So I bought I'd started writing back in 2019, and then COVID hit, and I bought a VW camper van and turned it into a coffee shop and bar. And I had it in Salford, in Boothstown, and people came down, and some people, it might have been their only interaction in the day because lockdown was in place. And if I could be that tiny little, hi, you're right, how's it going? Coffee, yeah, sweet. It's the perfect place to have those sort of conversations over a coffee. And that was where the thirsty poet was born. That's the thirsty element, is the coffee and the drinks and the cakes and all of these sort of, but it's also the thirst for knowledge and thirst for connection. As I constantly long for, is kind of the connection and finding these similarities between people. Yeah.
You mentioned that you're sort of going into schools. I imagine that's going to be sort of mixed groups. But do you have any sort of fears or outlooks for sort of boys sort of growing up in this world?
Yeah, I think there's certain groups that I've worked with in the past where, as soon as you say poet to someone, or poem or poetry, they all go into the la-di-da love poems, and a lot of lads would think, well, that's not for me. That's not for me. I can't. No, I'm not doing that. I'm going to turn myself into this like masculine lad. But most rappers are poets.
Yeah.
So the people that you're listening to on the radio, or the people who might be saying some offensive or some maybe less PG things than I do, they're they're writers. They're writing from a place of the heart, and that's what I try and encourage with a lot of the school groups. I work with I've worked with schools that have got that are really diverse, and I find that incredible. And sometimes the best, it might be working with a class of 50 kids, and it might just be that one kid who started by being an absolute dick, and then turns around and actually goes and writes one profound word or shares one profound thing. And I go, got him. He's on my side now. That's fine. But then again, there is a worry for where social media and all of these sort of things. We don't have phones at school, which I feel like was quite a lucky thing. But
Yeah.
they're constantly, they've got something that might impact them negatively at their fingertips instantly. So I'm just there to open up that for an hour long class. Just say, right, okay, sweet, let's talk about this. I mean, another piece that I wrote, I worry for the kids. Influenced by influencers and TikTok trends, consuming toxic podcasts by toxic men. They're seeing content on the internet they're too young to consent, senselessly streaming sex sleepers through an OnlyFans lens, thinking that's how all women are. But it's all made up, pretend he's at loose ends, needs a release, so logs on and offends. Parents unaware downstairs of the dark messages they send. You can't comprehend, learn behaviours that'll make your hairs stand on end. I worry for the kids. Skipping school again, filming hate crimes, joining race riots, fueling far rights claimed as patriots, erasing every fight we've fought for freedom. Kids will learn what they are taught. I've seen them follow guys who've redesigned this new world, Tate of mind. I worry for the kids. The creatives at heart, the ones who see life having art in their hearts, the one who film trends they don't agree with from the start to gain likes and friends and to feel socially apart. Filtering out common flaws, creating eating disorders, eating uncensored content, vomiting out senseless orders. It is hard to digest, harder to stomach it. Brainwashing out life and the socials are numbing it, drip feeding X and IG as you finger and thumb at it, but the need is for more. So dark web, you are running it, a tangle of content caught up and you're stuck in it. Things no one should see and you are becoming it. I worry for the kids. We're trying to keep alive like they're Tamagotchis, but we've to save them from knives. Who's their role model? Who cares? Who do they have to look up to behind the balaclavas and bikes? Who can they actually talk to? How many more horror nightmares do kids have to succumb to? Is the pressure so strong that children are concealing weapons? Can we right all the wrongs that change family lives in a second? I don't want to have to worry anymore for the kids. I want to know they'll be fine, that society will change and refine, that things will get better and relieve all the pressure, that families can sleep well knowing there's no way to access or see things they don't want to that will harm or upset or teach them the wrong lessons, so kids can grow up to become who their kids can look up to. Role models, a successor, fighting to keep all children safe, offline, together. Kind of lends itself into that kind of narrative of do I worry about these kids that I'm teaching in school?
Yeah.
Constantly have that kind of those thoughts, but you don't know what anyone's backstory is. This is the thing. You're working with kids in schools. You don't know where they're going back to, or how home life is, or are they their friends bad role models?
It is tough, that side of things, whether what family life looks like. You're a fleeting presence for a lot of them. I do a little bit of work in schools also, and it feels like you're spending the first 45 minutes gaining their trust, and then you're trying to scrap everything. Yeah, you're gone.
Yeah.
So it's a fine balance for sure. I really want to come back to the word observation. I think it's something that's really, really powerful, and I think we talk about this lens of world through social and what boys and girls have access to, but you like say it's almost a drug within that spoken word there. But do you think a part of observation is questioning? Because I feel that it's a consumption, like you say, a drug. How do we tweak and change from consumption to critical thinking?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been questions for me. Always, everything started with a question, and I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong to these questions. I just think people are interested, and I think people do it all the time, don't they? They'll be sat on a train and they'll make a story about someone, or they'll see a couple sat on a bench and they'll be like, I wonder if they're on a first date. I wonder if they're this, and this. And I do think that's the kind of, they're the questions to start with that then only open up other doors to deeper questions. Anyone can do that. You know what I mean? Anyone can can do what I have done with voicing these things. Everyone thinks these thoughts. It's just being kind of, I'm not saying I'm really brave, but I was brave to share that first poem that I ever wrote. It was all about critical thinking and then delving deeper into the kind of research into what these thoughts are. Or, you know, when I'm writing a piece, I don't just write it from my point of view, but I look into newspaper articles and I look into what I've listened to on the news or stories that I've heard other people tell me, and I always use those as a kind of next catalyst to the next stage of a conversation. So yeah, it's all goes. There's kind of like a cycle of constant questions that hopefully spur some form of answers. But if they don't, that's okay. At least it's just opened up something.
Yeah. I think there is no answer, right, to a lot of this. I think it's just a constant exploration. I think the dangerous side is that there is already answers and people are trying to latch onto those rather than the fun side, the play side, you've called it, which is,
yeah. Play is something that I will always take into everything I do. I'll take it into friendships, I'll take it into relationships, I'll take it into work. And exploring and trying and being engaged and learning through failure and learning through other people. You know, I'm not perfect, and I don't want to. Yeah, it's difficult. I'm not perfect.
It's so hard to say, right? I think when you have this sort of like audience, or you are willing to open up, people think that you are okay, or you're like you've got it cracked. And yeah, I think that's a nice way to sort of say we're not perfect. No one's perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it. There's a I was looking into this Japanese art form called kintsugi, which is that if you know, using broken pottery, and rather than discarding it and throwing it in the bin, it's reassembling it and filling the cracks with gold leaf to create this imperfect perfect. I wrote a piece called Kintsugi. You know, all things are created and destined to be broken someday. Being broken or damaged is never a bad thing. We develop scars that we shouldn't hide behind. Our imperfections can be the birth of something new. And like porcelain dropped on floors, I'm flawed. But don't throw me away, because behind this door there's a guy repairing pots with gold. His name is Kintsugi. He knows I am not perfect, and that's okay. See, I do not claim to be. I am broken fragments of pottery put back together imperfectly, painting crackled surfaces in gold leaf, highlighting my repairs to find with time and care the beauty in my broken. I am not perfect. I do not claim to be, but embracing my perfectly imperfect I shall do happily. I am the beauty in the broken. I am kintsugi. So if you ever get the chance to see this kintsugi, I just thought it was a beautiful analogy, and that kind of beautiful Japanese art form that feels quite human.
Yeah.
You know, we should all be able to say, I got it wrong, cool, but not having it as a lost limb. It's actually there going, I got it wrong. And that's a time in my life that I got that wrong. I guess that's the kind of, you know, idea of tattoos for some people, isn't it? It's highlighting those moments and the struggles people get. There's a semicolon, isn't it, for men's mental health? That is a sign of I am not perfect. I have gone through this, and that's what I've learned. I just think it's quite a nice, beautiful kind of symbolic way of thinking, kind of going back to the beginning. I'm not perfect, and I'll make mistakes, and I will take responsibility for my mistakes, and that's okay.
I think the men's space is a bit like that. I think there's so many little fragments and little things, and I'm seeing now a bit more of people sort of pulling it all together and showing other men where it is, and almost using these threads as the bits of gold to sort of create this piece that is a random walking club with ferrets all the way down to Andy's Man Club, which may be a little bit more
Yeah.
serious. So yeah, I like that analogy a lot. There's a lot of beauty in putting things
Mm.
together that should be together, but have maybe broken up a little bit.
Mm.
Sort of, in your opinion, what in the men's space do you like right now, and what are you hoping to see more of in the future?
I do think it's more interesting how many more men are talking. I think it is very open. I think, it's groups like these, Andy's Man Club, 2 Pints, the kind of running clubs that are coming about, which um, I do think there's something really important about that, and it'll be really important to see how that grows in different communities as well. That it's not just for this set of people; it's for anyone to discuss and discover and find those similarities. And I think it's more interesting seeing TV and film and actually seeing vulnerable men. I remember watching All of Us Strangers, the Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal film, and being like, there's two men just crying at each other. And I've never felt more connected in that way. I mean, I bloody cry when two lads hug in films, even if they're like brothers or best mates or son and dad. And you see two men like need that hug. Like, Jesus, hug your friends, like hug them. And even if you can't see them all the time, try and find that connection, even if it is something as small as sending something that made you think of them on Instagram as a reel, or there's a lot of negatives on there, but there might be something that comes up that you're like, that's quite you. I actually thought about you while I was doom scrolling for an hour. Finding that kind of positive in the negatives of social media, I guess. And just having that kind of feeling like there is a space for men to talk. That's what I hope to see more of. More men sharing their stories, and however that is, whether it's in a piece of music, whether it's in a piece of poetry, whether it's in an essay, whether it's, just finding that way in which to tell a story and share their story comfortably.
Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for performing. It was really good to hear, and I'm sure the listeners enjoyed it. If they want to find out more, where can they find you? And I will leave the final thoughts with yourself.
Yeah, so all of my poetry kind of goes on Instagram. I haven't yet branched out into TikTok yet, but the Instagram handle is _co. And all of my kind of poetry reels are on there. I'll be doing more live performances across Manchester and hopefully a bit further afield. That'll be kind of where my where people can find me. And I think just that final thought is accepting the beauty in your broken, and accepting that we're not perfect, but we can take responsibility, and we can learn from our stories.